I'm sure you understand what the EQ does. I bet that is the first plugin you put in your channel strips. And I know that you very well understand the general workabout of an EQ. You boost the lows, you get a boomy sound. You boost the highs, you get treble or sharpness. You boost the mid, you get body. You cut around 200 and boost around 4K, you get crispiness. You boost too much around 4K, ow, that's very difficult to your ears. You cut a little bit of 3K and boost a little bit of 7K. Now it's much more pronounced sound. Well, that's all EQ does, doesn't it? But hey, is this a YouTube shot? No, this is a full video. Because there's a lot about EQ that you need to understand in order to use it for your mixing purposes or sound designing purposes. Let's talk about the philosophy of EQ. In music production, mixing, we often talk about taking multiple sounds and kind of layering them in such a way that one is at the back, one is in the front. For example, chords are generally at the back. A lead synth can be in the front. But if that lead synth starts playing a counter melody behind a main melody, which is probably, let's say, run by the vocals, then you might want your lead to come back a little bit and the vocal takes the front place. Now, all these relationships of which is in front, which is behind, etc. is not only determined by the volume. You cannot just go ahead and just automate the volume. That's not gonna work. You need to understand how frequency requires to be shaped in order for your listener to feel one sound is in front in comparison to another sound, which is behind it. Let's design a quick audio experiment to understand how the perception of audio frequency changes if a sound is closer to us compared to far from us. Okay, so we have a drum beat here that normally sounds like this. Great. Now let's assume this microphone is going to act like your ears. We record this sound with this microphone. The pair of speakers are the source of the sound. Now, if your listener's ears go way too close to the source or come much further away from the source, how the sound changes. Great. So now I'm gonna turn on the recording and take this microphone closer to the speaker here. You can see the recording is going on. All right, now let's take this far away from the speaker. I'm gonna stand between the microphone and our speaker system. In that way, we could emulate if a sound is way further behind.
Alright, so in this session we have got the original loop, the close mic and the far mic. So let us loop this section and open up the span analyzer on each of them. So the original loop looks pretty balanced. There is a little bit of lows, a little bit of highs, and a little bit of mid cut. Nothing too dramatic. However, when you go to the close mic recording or the far mic recording, this horrible cut over here coming from the comp filtering effect which is taking place in my room. If you look at the low section, there are differences but not too much. In the original loop, you would see it is touching -48. In the close miking position, it is kind of maintained. However, for the far miking position, you would see it has gone a little bit too far. The reason once again is bass treatment, no matter how much you do in your home studio, is never really adequate. However, the most interesting thing is taking place on the highs. You would find out that this generally stays in this range, that is between -54 and -48, whereas the close mic is going between -48 and -42. That means the sound is more sharper here. And the far mic comes between -60 and -54, which is once again much lower than the original -48 and obviously way too lower from the close miking position.
So now that we understand there is a difference in how we perceive the higher frequencies of an audio when it's closer to us versus far from us, let's see if we could translate this knowledge in an actual music production scenario. So right now these three layers sound really bad, because nobody's in front of anybody, nobody's behind anybody, it's all like competing for space. But now let us see how EQ could fix this. Hey, sorry for interruption, but if you think this video is being helpful so far, why don't you hit the like button once? Don't do it twice, it doesn't work.
Okay, so you can see we have got the audio versions of these MIDI files below down over there, and I'm gonna switch off these MIDI files and simply hide them. Now, before I start working, let us quickly have a look at the observations that we had from our audio experiment. We know that the higher frequency zone of the EQ sounds more sharper if a sound has to appear more closer to our ears, and it has to be a little duller if the sound has to go a little back in the spectrum. Now at this moment, I have a lead sound here, a pad sound here, and the trans pad which is giving us the chords. Let me rename this to chords. Now we know that the chords should always go behind. So I'm gonna add an EQ over here, and I'm going to take the highs a little low. Now listen to this, it already feels going so much farther behind. If I switched off, right over there on your ears. If I switch it on, it's there, it's very much there. Now let's do the same thing with this groove pattern. Now here, I think I'm gonna go with the mid-side EQ because I want to process the middle and the sides a little differently. So to do that, we can do it with the typical channel EQ, or we can go for the more professional FabFilter Pro Q3. Finally, to bring this lead sound closer to our ears, I'm gonna boost a little bit of the highs. Now we need to remember we do not have a bass sound yet, we do not have a drum sound yet. To make it sound fuller, make it sound complete, I guess it's time we add one. There we are. Now if we do a little bit of before and after comparison, that's not clean at all. And if you're thinking, well, we are getting more energy here, well, that would mean you have no idea how it sounds in mastering. You cannot master a mix if this is the mix. But the moment I switch on these EQs, there are a lot of space opening up immediately.
Great, so now that you understand the philosophy of EQs, let's get started with the philosophy of compressors.